Thank you for that brief interruption,
Good.
Mr. Alicina. So, um, here's what I have on my calendar for you today. So, my understanding is that on February the 12th, you filed a verified emergency petition for a TRO regarding the landlord at your property, who is listed as Godly Jack, although I, of course, am really question whether that's a true legal name of any person. But I
Yeah.
assume that's the name that you have known or used to communicate with your landlord. I'm also aware that you have a some sort of action that was pending in the that is pending in the magistrate court that was filed a few days before that. And then I know originally you had reached out to our presiding judge, who advised you that, the case had already been assigned to me. And so that was on the 12th, which was 2 days ago. And then we got you set for a hearing this morning. I did have the opportunity to see the information that you had provided by email in the last couple of days to my staff attorney. And I have had a chance to review your petition. Before we get started, it is my legally my obligation to find out from you what efforts you have made or what efforts have been successful to try and notify Godly Jack, whoever that actual person is, either electronically, by hard mail, by physical delivery, by phone, that this proceeding was happening today. If you could tell me that, Mr. Alicina.
Yes, ma'am. The name Godly Jack, that's actually his name. He's a doctor. He's a cardiologist. And I called the only number I had, which
Okay.
I could find, which was his office number.
Mm-hmm.
And his medical assistant, well, I left a message first. She called me back. I recorded these things too. She called me back and she said that he was at the hospital today and that she would give him the message. And I told her that it was an urgent matter of going to court at 10:30 tomorrow, which is
Mm-hmm.
today. And she said she would definitely do that. She asked me, was it a personal matter? I said, yes, it is. She said, well, I would definitely pass this message on to him. I will send him a message right now.
Okay.
And the thing is, I didn't expect him to call me back. He's been ignoring me in everything. He doesn't respond to anything.
Right.
So that's what has been happening. And I tried to get in touch with him. That's the only number I had for it.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I see now that you have provided me with that information. I'm able to confirm that that person is a real person who's a doctor, and if you have attempted to contact that person and communicate that with them, then it seems like they had some knowledge that this proceeding was going to occur. Now, I do want to be clear that your efforts at notifying them about this proceeding is specifically for the purpose that, where possible, we try to avoid having ex parte or granting ex parte relief or having ex parte hearings. And so typically what we will do is require the person seeking to have the emergency hearing to provide some documentation that they've made an effort to notify the person. And so for the limited purpose of today, I'm satisfied that you have made some notice, made some effort. Now, what I want to be clear about, though, is that going forward, the lawsuit that you have in magistrate court and the lawsuit here, your efforts to notify that person don't satisfy the formal obligation to serve them with the lawsuit, so that if we go forward past any temporary relief that I impose, if you want him to respond to those lawsuits, you're still going to have to formally get the sheriff or a private process server to serve him. Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Definitely.
just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
Okay, so again, just so that we're clear, based on what you've advised me of efforts to communicate with him through the traditional means that you've typically communicated with him, plus contacting a medical assistant at his medical clinic and notifying him of this proceeding, I find that sufficient effort to have tried to make him aware. Now,
Yes.
just so you understand, the way an ex parte works is that we will enter, depending on your presentation today, let's say I enter some sort of ex parte relief for you in the form of a TRO. Just want to make sure you understand it's a very temporary, short-term order that I will then provide to Mr. Jack. And then we would set another hearing where he would have an opportunity. We would have a later opportunity to determine if there would be some longer term relief. Just want to make
Yes,
sure you
ma'am.
understand that as well, Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Alcina. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
excellent. Okay. So, Mr. Alacina, I am aware of a good deal of the facts. Can you tell me, I've also recently, for a moment ago from Mr. Freehoff been provided, but a list of sort of the relief that you're seeking from Mr. Jack or Dr. Jack, I guess. If you could sort of walk me through the nature, if I were to give you a temporary restraining order, what is it that you would like me to either restrain or compel, right? Because those are the only things I can do. I can either tell him you can't do something or I can tell him you must do something. So
Yes,
tell me what it is that you are seeking to have this court do.
yes, Your Honor. Thank you. I want him to be compelled to give me access to the property, to my belongings and to my property, and do it until he goes through a procedure. If he wants me to be evicted, that he goes through the legal process to make that happen. Although I am going to move out, before all of that. But it's just that right now, when he just abruptly locked the doors and put me out, I don't have my property. I don't have my herbs. I'm diabetic, and I control my diabetes through herbs and exercise. I don't have any of that. I know my sugar's up now. Um, and I want him to be compelled to allow me entry into the property and don't have any harassment of me. Just let the process go. Don't move my things or don't dispose of my property. Um, well, compel him to do that. Restrain him from harassing me. Restrain him from, I only want, after this, only communication I would want with him is through an attorney or anything like that. So it's like, for me, I guess it's really simple. I guess to me it is, it's just like, I just want to go back to the property and be able to stay there until this process is over and have access to my belongings, and him not destroy my belongings, him not dispose of my belongings or anything like that. Those are the only things really that I want to compel him to do. I think
Okay.
hopefully,
Let me
you know.
ask you a couple of questions because I am aware that pad split exists. Like I have a
Yeah,
general idea of what it is.
yes,
But one question I did have is that oftentimes, especially with these online platforms, when you enter into them, um, you are agreeing to a laundry list of terms and conditions that maybe we don't understand or we don't pay attention to. And
right.
I'm not saying because I have never seen them that they would be valid. But one question I do have is, are you aware if anything in the special terms and conditions of pad split when you sign up says that you're giving up your right to formal eviction processes? Not that necessarily that would be legal. I'm just saying, do you know if anything like that is included?
It is not included. In fact, they specifically say that once you are because you have a membership that you buy, basically you rent. So once you get the membership with Pad Split, then you decide which home you want to, they have a list of homes and you go there. And then if you're approved, they have a person that they call the host or the
Mm-hmm.
landlord. And that person is, of course, that manages the home. It's their home. So the Pad Split actually lays out, says that if your membership is terminated, then they advise you to leave the next day, next 2 days. They want you packed up and out.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't, they literally have in the website that they will go through eviction process, or the host has to go through eviction processes.
Okay.
So there's nothing like that.
Okay, thank you. And then
Mhm.
my next question is, um, I would not normally I would not do any of my own independent research, but when it's ex parte, I have to do a little bit of extra work to make sure that I'm considering other interests. And one thing that I did look up this property, and one of the reasons I was thrown off is the property records for Fulton County reflect that this property is owned by somebody named Catherine
Catherine?
Ogletree.
Yes.
Can you tell me what your understanding is of Mr. Jack's relationship to that person or
I saw that myself. I don't know what his relationship is with her. The home is, listed under her. I
right?
have no idea about what his relationship is to her.
Okay.
Um, but he is definitely the host
Okay.
or the manager of, and he's of the house.
Okay.
That's all I know.
Okay. A few more questions.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
when was the last time you paid rent or membership fee, and how far out does that go, right? Like, so if I paid last week, does that last for a week? Does it last for a month? How does that work?
It's weekly, and if you would like to know the circumstances as it concerns my pay, I think I pad split. You pay pad split. Pad split. They the clearinghouse for the host.
Right.
It's
Like I said, I have a general idea of how that works. I just
okay.
didn't know about hosts and about what the rules and terms and conditions were for pad split. The reason I asked that question is that anytime we're dealing with um, any sort of issue where someone is in a place living and they have paid, or one of the things we look at is we have to balance the interests between your right to not be wrongly evicted, assuming that that someone isn't attempting to do that, versus the owner's right to have the value of their property, which is payment to remain. And so I'm just trying to figure out, when was the last time, and I know that you mentioned in some of the things that you've provided to me that you had been going through some financial difficulties, and I certainly understand that. I'm just trying to figure out, if I were to try and craft some temporary relief. For example, you must provide access to the property for him to gather his belongings. That's one possible relief. Um, I could set a time on it that you must provide him access and allow him to remain there for a week while he figures out something else to do. What I'm trying to figure out is, what is your position for how long you're entitled to be there based on any payment that you've made? Or do you acknowledge that you haven't made payment, but they still have to follow those legal requirements to kick you out? And I think legally that might make you a holdover tenant under Georgia law or something like that. But answer that for me if you can, Mr. Alessina.
Yes, ma'am. I am behind, and I was behind in my rent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and my membership by past split had been terminated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so I was behind like 200 and some $379, I believe, and I
Okay.
was supposed to pay it that Friday.
Right.
When I wasn't able to, then Mr. Jack came that Saturday and told me to get out. And then I asked him, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to leave, and I'm not trying to really give you any issues. It's just I'm in a position to where I just can't just leave it. I'm trying to do about 5 days or so. He said, no, 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 you leaving today. And so that day he locked me out.
Okay.
Okay. And so the thing is, even when we talk about balancing it, it's like it would be balanced if he didn't, in my view, I don't know, of course you're the judge. It's like he has performed something illegal. Even if I'm behind, there's a process. Even if I didn't pay rent, there's a process that he has skipped. So he's broken the law in order to effectuate this eviction. And so the only thing I'm saying is I would like to go, not just to gather my things, because right now I'm living in my car. And so only thing I would like to do is go there, of course, gather. I want my things. I want to make sure I have my things. And then I'm going to be in a position to go and seek other other places that I could live. Right now, it's so difficult for me to do any of that when I don't have much money, of course, really none. Um, and I just don't have any other recourse. This is the only recourse I have, is to let me go back to the place. I will leave, but he still has to file an eviction if he wants me to go. Not that I'm going to stay. I just need some time, at least maybe a week or two, maybe 2 weeks, to get my stuff together so I can get another place. And I have a job offer in North Carolina, and so I just need to be able to gather myself, because this living on the street that I've been doing, it has thrown me completely out of whack. And so I just need to be able to go back. If he wants to evict me, not that I plan to stay, because I'm not. But if he wants to evict me, he has a process that he's supposed to go through, and that's all I'm asking.
Understood. So, um, well, let me start by saying this. I don't think that there is I absolutely agree with you that you have a right to your belongings and that legally they are not, if you are present when they advise you to leave, whether it's valid or authorized and whether they've followed a proper procedure or not, that it is appropriate and I think necessary for them to provide you an opportunity to at least gather your belongings and move out in an orderly fashion. I will say, I'm not familiar with pad split and how it relates to short-term occupancy versus legal eviction proceedings. But I will say that my understanding of the law is that there is there's a limited authority that I have to require a landlord to allow someone to remain in their property when they're not paying, right? So I'm not saying I don't have any authority, but that authority is limited. Can you tell me what is the status of that magistrate action? Because a lot of times those magistrate cases get set for hearing very quickly. And in terms of the actual legal underlying issue, in terms of whether it was a wrongful eviction or not, and whether you can remain, have you received any notice of a hearing date for that?
Okay, no, ma'am. I haven't
Okay.
received a hearing date for that as of yet. He
Hmm.
still has to be served, and I only had at first the one address, which is where I live, because I didn't know where he lived or anything like that. And so I'm going to go and it's something I have to file to make sure that they can serve him at the only address that I have, which is his job.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to do that hopefully today.
Okay.
But the other thing is I am not requesting of the court to make it where you saying, well, he can come and he can just stay. No, I'm only saying, that that his illegal eviction, putting me out, all the things that he's doing is illegal. And so the only thing I'm asking, because I've called the police and it 3 times, and each time they said to me, it is a civil matter. The only recourse I have right now is this vehicle that I have now. It's like there's no other recourse
Yeah.
that I have except for this.
Hmm.
And so I just want to be able to, one, be able to enter the property and not be obstructed from doing so, meaning give me access codes so I can go in and out if I need to. Of course, have access to my property that he has not disposed of, that he has not destroyed or even moved. Um, those things, and then that would be the limit that I would ask the court to have, is giving me access. Now, after that, he is supposed to go through the process, if it comes to that, of evicting me. So I'm not asking the court to be like, give him access and then he can just stay for however. No, it's just simply about getting me back to where I would be had he not did an illegal action. That's
Understood.
it.
Okay. Um, okay. So within the constraints of what I feel like is that I'm authorized to do and what I feel like is appropriate, based on what I've heard and what I understand. I am going to grant you a TRO, ex parte. This matter is going to be set for another hearing, likely midweek next week, that will give Mr. Jack an opportunity to respond.
Good.
We will also, I mean, you should continue your efforts because you got to get him served anyway in the 2 cases. You should continue your efforts to notify him. We will also attempt to notify him. But here's what I'm going to provide. Mr. Freehoff, are you with me?
Yes, Judge, I'm listening and taking this
Okay,
down.
right, because I thank you so much. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to enter a temporary restraining order requiring that the defendant grant access to the property where you are a tenant. I understand that the physical location of that home is 1894 Delow. Can you tell me, it says your room is room number 7.
Yes,
Um,
ma'am.
and my question is, how do you access that room? And are there common areas that you also access, or are you amenable to not accessing those spaces and only accessing your room?
Well, the thing is, of course, I would have to travel through the common
Of
areas.
course, but that's
And
different.
yes,
For
ma'am.
legally purpose, traveling through a common area to access your space is not the same as being entitled to access a common area. For example, to use a kitchen, or do you have items stored in the kitchen, or think
I
that's
do.
what I'm asking.
Okay, yes, ma'am. My apologies. I do have items stored in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And the access to the home, I think, I don't know if I put it, the access to the home and access to the room, because both of them have different codes.
Okay.
You know, the room, because it's a rooming house. You
Right,
know,
sure.
right. So once I get access to the home, I need to get in the exterior door to get in my room, and the room has codes too. And those are the two things. That's mainly what I need.
Okay.
As far as common areas are there, and I would, under, the fact that he's illegally evicted me. If he had not done that, I would still have access to those things. But I have items like my coconut milk, and I have probiotics, things that I need like I say, I take care of my diabetes through my diet and through supplements and
Okay,
exercise.
Mr. Alacina, forgive me for interrupting you, but let me
My
just take
apologies.
one quick break. Hold on just 1 second.
Okay.
Sorry for that interruption, Mr.
That's
Alacina.
okay.
And so
No problem.
where you left off, I understood you were saying that you do have a few personal items that are in the fridge, maybe in the kitchen otherwise. I don't have any problem with that. When I was talking about areas that you might access, I wanted to make sure that I was being specific.
Yes.
For example, if you didn't have anything in any of the common areas, then I wouldn't need to include that you were entitled to do anything other than travel through.
Gotcha.
So that's why I was asking.
Yes,
Um,
ma'am.
Okay, so I am going to enter a TRO that requires Godly Jack, to the extent that he legally controls access to the property for you, to allow access to the property. And if that means providing you with the access codes to the exterior doors and to the room that you were previously occupying, room number 7, then I'll require that he provide you with those access codes. I will also require that that the defendant not harass you publicly or privately,
Mhm.
except for, and really just to have no communication other than for purposes of maintenance or through a third party.
Yes, ma'am.
I will also require in the TRO that the defendant may not dispose, displace, move, remove, or otherwise take any possessions or your property out of your room or the common area where it's allowed to be stored. And I don't know, I haven't heard anything from you indicating that there are physical locks that might be changed other than these passcodes that are, I know in the picture and video that you showed me, these were all keypad type locks.
Yes, ma'am.
And so what I will do is require that the defendant may not, once he provides you with access to access the home in order to get to your room, which I understand to be 2 separate passcodes. And he may do that by either providing you with a new passcode or reinstalling or reopening the passcodes that you previously had for the purposes of accessing your room. Now, as I was saying, in terms of my limited authority to require a landlord to allow you to remain in a place,
Right.
for now, because Mr. Freehoff, is it Wednesday or Thursday that we are having hearings?
Judge, it's the Thursday the 20th. We have a brief calendar with one matter on it, and then we have another calendar on the 27th.
Okay, well, I want to do it as soon as possible, and since we're already having a calendar on, I mean, we could do it on Tuesday as well, but either Tuesday or Thursday, I'm going to work with Mr. Freehoff when we're drafting this order.
Okay.
But what we're going to do is for now, all I'm going to say is that he can't remove you physically. Now, that does not mean that he cannot, and I will say in my order that does not prohibit him from initiating legal eviction proceedings.
Yes, ma'am.
But that until we have that second hearing, which will either be Tuesday or Tuesday or Thursday of next week, that he may not remove you from that property. Now, in all fairness, Mr. Alacina, I understand that you dispute some of the things that were apparently said about you making people uncomfortable or whatever, which was the stated purpose for Mr. Jack removing you from the property. But I will tell you, anytime I deal with these types of disputes, which I deal with remarkably frequently,
Mhm.
but I will include in my TRO not only that Mr. Jack is prohibited from harassing you, but I will also usually provide some general language that says that the parties are obligated to exercise good faith efforts towards each other, and that
Yeah.
they should minimize any contact with anyone in the house, and certainly avoid any harassing contact or communication with anyone. Because what I want to avoid is, I feel like the best thing here, given the somewhat difficult circumstances of your going back to the home, is I want to avoid you having conflict with either Mr. Jack or with other people in the home
Yes.
related to your returning to that property. And again, cannot underscore enough, this is a temporary order.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in full disclosure, Mr. Jack, the purpose of having another party come and give their side of the story is that when I hear from Mr. Jack, he might provide me with information that says, no, sir, Mr. Alessina, he has the right to make you leave. And I'm going to say, you need to leave. So I want to make sure you understand that clearly, Mr. Alessina.
Clearly, because I
Okay.
know it right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Mr. Freehoff, did you gather that in terms of what we're going to do?
Yes, Judge, I've been typing as you've been talking, so I think I have it.
So we're going to get that order as quickly as we can. We are going to attempt to provide it to Mr. Jack at his place of business. Although, again, not our obligation. That's just a courtesy. And you are the one who still continues to have the obligation to make him aware of it.
Yeah.
And then I guess I will see you. We will send everyone an email on probably today regarding when the hearing will be, whether it will be on Tuesday or Friday of next week, and it will also be a Zoom hearing.
Yes, ma'am. And I will definitely try to get in contact with him. I may even, if I have a chance, to even go up to his office. I didn't want to have physical contact with him because he's had this kind of, I don't know, he's had just this thing. I don't know, but I will call.
Mr. Alessina, I can't give you legal advice, but I will say that given the negative interactions that y'all have had, and the fact that rightly or wrongly, because I don't know the answer, Mr. Jack has accused you of being aggressive or difficult with some people in the building. I think that was, I understand you dispute that, but that's something that I saw in that information. And so because of that, I would strongly discourage you from going to Mr. Jack's place of business. I think that's just going to cause more trouble and difficulty. And again, that's not legal advice. That's just my best advice as a human being. So anything else that I need to address, Mr. Freehoff, that you think I've not addressed?
No, Judge, other than letting Mr. Alessina know that we will email him the order once it is done.
Mr. Freehoff mentioned something yesterday, Mr. Alessina. So it seems like we are able, the court's chambers and Mr. Freehoff, that we're able to email you. But the email that we put into the system for you in e-file, which would normally generate notices. So like when we file an order, it generates a notice to anybody who's in the file.
Okay.
It doesn't like your email address. I don't know why, but the Georgia e-file system doesn't like your email address. And so to the extent that you want to log into that e-file system and make sure that it's got an email address that it will send notices to so that you will get notices, we will typically provide email notification ourselves. But it is your obligation under the rules, even as someone who's not a lawyer, to make sure that there's a valid address in Georgia e-file that it will send email addresses to. And I don't know why it doesn't like your email address. It just doesn't.
Okay, I'll go down to the courthouse because that's where I go to do all this stuff, and I'll do my best to make sure.
Understood.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Freehoff, anything else?
No, other than we'll get to work on that order so it can, and I'll expedite it. I'll ask the clerk to expedite its acceptance so it's on record today.
Yes.
And then once I have a file stamped copy, I will email it to Mr. Alessina.
Okay. And one last thing, Mr. Alessina, You said that Mr. Godley Jack is a cardiologist. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure, we're identifying the right person. Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Godley Jack. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
Again, I will see you next week. Okay.
All right. Thank you.